You guys excited for PyJail? Best category by far. Definitely most useful too.
Yeah.
This time I adjust it. I got in one challenge type that like someone might write somewhere.
What?
Like someone might write one of the vulnerabilities I put in these slides.
Oh,
Like probably not, but like 20% chance they write it. Or it's 20% chance.
double format.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like people don't naturally write that, but they might.
I've never seen double format.
I mean, you get accidentally.
Really? Yeah, because I was feeling like, it's small execution. When you print that out, you have to know it. Then dealing with the vertical format. So there's only a very.
Stand here with you, or
I was gonna present the whole thing, but
do you want me to stand here with you, or
it's up to you. Whichever's more comfortable. Yeah, I want to see if anyone else shows up. Yeah, if you write that code and put it on a server, bad things happen.
I think that's.
No, it's just me.
We just put his name on the slide.
Bro, all helpers got to do one meeting, so like sneak in.
They did like two.
Actually, this year. Okay, then why? Yeah, why'd you even volunteer?
No, I didn't realize this reading got moved. Check my Discord on like.
Oh, you're like, oh shit.
It got moved, right?
Yeah, I got moved because I didn't know what to do this week because like no one's
I
here.
checked Discord like countries and like, what?
I mean, it doesn't matter. This is not like complicated. If we fit PyGel 2 in, we could do it. There's enough like material. It gets crazy enough. But like I think maybe one person in this whole club would understand PyGel 2. Maybe once you get into like you can do syscall filtering and then people will get it. But the bytecode stuff, it's like no one.
Interesting much too.
Yeah, it changes every version. So you have to like keep relearning it. There are stable ones. I didn't put any here, but there are stable ones.
Website, right? That's like allegedly AI balance that keeps up with you.
Actually, I've not heard of this. AI PyGel. ChatGPT can't do these. It's too hard. It'll give you wrong indexes. I'll wait till 05 and then we'll start. But yeah, ChatGPT.
Yeah. You know who the other guy was? Who's Andrew Fisher? He was there? He was right there, yeah. He walked out. Like, okay, so he came to campus to like talk to FPG. So I just said it there. I'm always from here. And he looked at me, he's like, yo, that's, he said it full name. Oh, yeah, that's right. He's like, oh, yeah, I remember. Oh, yeah, he was funny buddies with Andy at the dinner.
Oh my gosh. I kind of entered myself for that.
I mean, are you interested?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I was a little bit like, I was okay. So like, before UAC with John, I was like, nah, I don't care about it. Right? And so I was like, oh, so I don't know. And so I think I didn't apply, even though I got like a reach out.
Oh, yeah, he mentioned, he told me, he's like, oh, yeah, you applied. I'm like, hey, you shot to, we never applied, so I don't think we're interested.
Yeah. But now I'm like, because I was the freshman. I think it's well, I was the freshman that jumped this one.
Test.
It's like for one, we're going to have time.
Test. Is this good? All right, I'm going with this. Okay, it's 6:05, so let's start. Python jails. I said this before, but this is my favorite category, and this will probably be the only meeting I run all year. So the guys who came here, you're in for a treat. Oh, I need to. Alright, cool. Only announcement is that like half of our helper team and admin team is at CSOL right now. It's a competition in New York, so wish them good luck. They're like playing right now as we speak. Hopefully they do well. Last year we got 3rd place, so hopefully we do as good or better. Yeah. Here's the meeting flag. I'll leave it up. Pretty simple. This is going to be a theme, by the way. Like everything I'm going to show you today is abusing the fact that Python is incredibly weird programming. Like, it does things that you don't think it's going to. It doesn't do things you think it should. And like literally on the next slide, you'll see almost everything is something that you don't think is supposed to happen. We'll get back to the meeting flag. So here's my preface on how Python works. Every time you see a dot followed by letters to access an attribute, that's a function call. It runs dot get attribute. And that's equivalent to doing a different function called get adder, followed by the attribute you want to do in a string. So yeah, if you ever see these things, if you see get adder or get attribute, just know they're all equivalent to using the dot syntax. That's important. We're going to use this. And they have the equivalent for that for the brackets. In brackets, if you see followed by a number, and for example, using an array, that runs the get item function. And then if you see it with like a string with text, that runs get item as well. But this time like on the dictionary. So if you see brackets, just think get item. And this is strange because it's a function call, which means it doesn't have to just do what you think it's going to do. That function call could do anything. And there are parts of the Python standard library that do insane things for get item. Like you can load a CSO file and then like run it. That's in the standard library on get item. So you type brackets and that does RCE. Like crazy. So yeah, but just if you see any brackets, just think get item. All right, so what's a jail? A jail is a restricted environment that runs in the same context as the program, and I'm gonna have a cool diagram up on the next slide if you're confused by that. But the reason it's a jail instead of just a normal program is that they're running your input and they're putting some restrictions on it to keep you from just like immediately deleting everything. And it's different from a sandbox, which is the way you should actually do it if you want to run user-provided code, which is code that runs in a secure and unprivileged context. And then you serialize communication between that context and your main program. So here's the cool diagram. For instance, like the best example of a sandbox is just a whole virtual machine that can't access the network, can't read or write. Or even if you can read or write, all you can read or write is into the virtual machine. So if someone does get RCE and can run whatever you want on this sandbox, the worst they could do is just hurt themselves. So even if they like delete, hit rf/, like that doesn't actually do anything. It just destroys their own sandbox and you can just restart it and no harm's done. But if they get that same RCE in a jail and they manage to escape your restrictions, which we're going to show you almost always can in every type of jail, then they can change your main program, delete things on your main system, read your password files, read your environment variables, steal your API keys, everything that you don't want to happen. Give you like $1 billion AWS bill or a ChatGPT bill. So yeah, don't use jails. But people do. A lot of people do. But, all right, here's an example of when someone might want to write a jail. So you take in as input a Python function. In this case, we want to like ask the user to make a function that will add 2 numbers. So if you imagine like Prairie Learn, I think you've all had to like write code that gets run by a code runner. This is an example of a very insecure code runner. So here's the example, like if they give code they expect that like actually adds 2 numbers, it's a function that adds 2 numbers, everything works fine. But they don't check what you're running, so you can run anything. For example, in Python, you can just run system commands. And then this is kind of a benign example, but they could be doing all the bad stuff I talked about earlier. And yeah, you see it actually prints your username. So not good. They can run any shell command. They basically spawned a shell like in a pwn challenge. So yeah, this is real, definitely real. I think you can imagine a lot of contexts where they might want to take user provided code and run it and then see the output, like Prairie Learn, like LeetCode, like HackerRank, all those things where they run your code in an actual sandbox. But sandboxes are expensive and they're hard to make. So some people might reach for a jail instead, but they just run it and maybe they try to prevent you from doing some things. You'll see some examples of that. But yeah, and also if you're not in cybersecurity, if you're just like a straight developer who doesn't hack anything, you might not be able to think of how your code can be broken. Because some of these get very, very creative. And yeah, also some jails are created in non-obvious ways, like you don't just use exec or eval, and we're going to show how that happens. So here's a source limitation. Basically, imagine them taking your user input as a string, and they just check for the word system. So if you write os.system, they're going to see it and they're going to be like, okay, don't run that, that's malicious. But there's a bunch of other Python functions that can do basically the same thing. Like os.popen also runs shell commands. Subrussels.call also runs shell commands. So any like list of vulnerable functions will not work. There will be more in the Python standard library that can get around that. So that's not good enough. Here we have some like stronger vulnerabilities. So like, since they're just checking for the word system, if we split up system into two different strings, now it doesn't see system, it just sees SYS and then single quote plus single quote TM. So that bypasses the check. You can encode the entire string into hex and Python will just decode it for you. Again, nowhere in this is the word string, so you bypass the check. You can split it into a bunch of decimal encodings and then concatenate them all together. So again, nowhere is the word string. And here's why Python is weird. You can put it all into super fancy italics. And then again, nowhere in the string is the word system, because this is not system. But Python will resolve it to system afterwards when running, which allows you to bypass them. There are so many challenges that can be broken by this, because people do a whitelist, yeah.
Why is it the check like built right before then?
Because what they're doing is they're taking your, like, this is just a string when you first like give it to the program. So as a string, like, I don't know the exact thing they're doing, but this is some like super high up Unicode character, not like U, which is lower down in the Unicode. So when they actually check on the string level, like this does not equal system. But when they run it, Python then converts it to like the normal characters and then runs it. So that's why you can bypass a check and then run it. Yeah, kind of weird. Same with these. All these happen when they actually get executed, not when they get checked by the program. And then here's the two broken ones that this breaks like every PyTrail challenge we have on our website. So because okay, breakpoint is weird. You can try it. It puts you into kind of like a REPL context in your program where you can run any sort of Python commands you want. And the exact input is simpler. All it's saying is just run whatever code you give as input. And since again, in this string, the word system isn't anywhere, it still runs, bypasses the check, even if you type system in afterwards. Because the input's going to ask you for input from the command line. And then if you put system there, you already bypass the check. So yeah, these two are broken. If you see a PyJail, try these two first. It might work. All right. And yeah, as you can see, it just keeps going. There's so many ways to bypass these whitelist filters. So we're using getAttr again. Remember, getAttr means dot. If you see getAttr, think dot. So we have os dot, and then this evaluates the system. So os.system, and then call who am I, which represents just like any malicious shell command. And then we have the super complicated one. Don't like, you might want to look at this in Python yourself if you want to learn more, because it gets weird. But here is the same idea. We have locals, which is just a dictionary. And then we're getting OS. The reason we're doing that is because for this challenge, it doesn't really matter. But if you imagine they also blacklisted OS, we can use one of the like 50 string producing methods we did. So then you can get like OS this way as a string instead of here where it's a keyword. And then we have this weird thing with dir. All this is saying is, yeah, that's weird. So dir just takes OS and then says all of the attributes on OS. And it happens that the 283rd attribute on OS is system, and it gives it to you as a string. So all of this just produces system as a string. So again, it's just os.system and calling it with lemma. Don't worry too much if you don't understand these. There are easier methods, and as you go with PyGel, you'll learn these more specifically. But
So then OS is just like locals OS is just an array of all the different functions you can call, like it's an array of function pointers.
locals is weird. Locals is a dictionary actually. It's a dictionary containing with the key is like the name of the local variable, and then the value is the actual local variable. So this is equivalent to just writing OS. It gives you the same OS as this. And yeah, if you guys have questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Raise your hand because this stuff is weird. Or this is just a joke. But yeah, you can see you can do malicious stuff like delete RMR slash and then get rid of their binaries. So yeah, don't do exec. Don't use it. Yeah.
Are there like examples where you can use other languages, or is it just?
Yes,
Yes. Yeah.
PHP,
Yeah.
the biggest offender in a variety of ways, but that's a topic for another day.
Almost every language has an eval. I guess not almost every. Almost every interpreted language has an eval. Many languages have a similar thing. So you'll see language name jail all over the place. And it's a similar idea.
Is this like fixable?
Feature.
Yeah, it is a feature. Not really. You're not supposed to do this. So if you do it, you have to expect problems. And people do it, and they don't expect problems. Most things in cybersecurity. Like some people use gets probably. Yeah, I think if you look up the documentation for exec and eval, they say in big bold letters, do not use this on user provided code. And
If you
people,
try to compile get to data, if you get a compiler error, you have to pass like, let me use gets or something like it to be able to use gets.
I'm sure people still do.
All here as well, but.
And I'm sure it breaks things. All right. Yeah, here's like one thing. This is kind of a beginner example, but you'll see sometimes people use eval. The difference between eval and exec is eval, you can only run like one line of code, whereas exec, you can run as many as you want, separated by new lines or semicolons. Also, yeah, if you guys didn't know, Python does support semicolons. So if you give it one line of like code and you separate what would be a new line with a semicolon, it will run. Kind of cool. But yeah, you can't do that with an eval because it only wants like one expression. But yeah, Python supports import as a function instead of like the import keyword, so you can get around using two lines. Or like this example is saying if someone already imported OS, then you can just access it directly from the globals. Don't worry about that too much. All right, here's a challenge for you guys. I'm gonna wait until someone does it, so like raise your hand as fast as you can. Otherwise, I'm just gonna be waiting here. So yeah, we want to be able to read a file, but we can't use double quotes, can't use open, and we can't use read. Just the word though. Like you can't have that in your string. Or if you can't figure out the whole thing, can you figure out how to bypass like one of the three? There's like three things they're checking. Yeah.
Single quotes.
Yep, you can use single quotes. And I showed examples. Can you guess what the other two is? We've learned there's other ways to read files, so just think of any of them. So it's open and read. Or if you know Linux, you can run shell commands too. There's a shell command that can read files. Read letters. Yeah, it's cat. All right, congrats. All right. So yeah, this is, I forgot to click. These are like two examples that don't work. You see it has open, open, read, double quotes for strings. What other? Okay. So yeah, here's the example we talked about. Use single quotes and use os.system to run a shell command cat, and that reads the file. But you can just do this. You can almost always do this. Okay. Here's a cheat sheet. I'm just gonna leave it up for 10 seconds. I'm not gonna explain anything. Like the key of PyGel is to memorize all of the Python internals or to be familiar with them enough that you can Google them when you need to. Like everything is just like a check. Like you look at it and you're like, I know what to do. There's creativity involved, but if you don't know the specific Python feature and you don't know how to find it, then you'll get stuck. So there's a lot of cheat sheets like these online that just tell you all the weird things you can do if you want to bypass something. So just look for one of these. Yeah. This is just like what you want to think whenever you see an environment limitation, like they look at your user provided input as a string and they say, you can't have this, you can't do that. Like you can't have this string of letters, or maybe sometimes you'll see harder ones that will like restrict access to certain things. You want to look to Python internals and be using that Python is weird. Using the weirdness. All right, here's an example of limiting what you have access to. So I'm going to do my best to explain what underscore underscore built-ins underscore underscore is. So every single like Python library function you've ever used, so like open, print, eval, exec, all of those come from this built-ins dictionary. So if in your environment, this built-ins dictionary is empty and you try to run like the print function, it'll be like, I can't find the print function. So you need your built-ins to not be empty in order to access it. But as the screenshot clearly notes, we were given access to globals, and in globals is built-ins. It's like right there. So we want to recover our built-ins because we want to be able to use the cool functions like import and print and eval and exec and input. And we have globals and built-ins is right there. So how can we use that? Like that. Globals is just a dictionary, so we can get access to this built-ins by running with brackets. And now that we have built-ins is just a dictionary that has every function we want, which includes import. So we can import OS and do whatever we need to. So this is an example of recovering built-ins, which is one of the like key PyGel techniques. You'll see all over the place. They'll give you no built-ins, you have to get them back. And the thing is, you can always get them back. No matter what they do to restrict built-ins, you can recover them. So here it was easy. It was like one layer deep in this globals. But what if we didn't have that? You can do this mess. So they gave us access to this print method. As it turns out, you can like go up the tree in Python. So we're saying get the print class base, which is going to give us access to the object type. And then since in Python, everything is a subclass of object, we can get everything that's loaded in Python by doing subclasses on it, since everything is a subclass of object. And this will change on every single Python version. And it will also change depending on what's happening in your program. But as it happens, the 104th subclass of the object type is what's called this frozen lib built-in importer object, which I'm sure no one has ever seen before today. So this is what Python uses under the hood to do imports, and it exposes this method called load module, which runs the exact same as import. So now we can import OS and then run system. And then we did it. But I bet you're thinking like, isn't this kind of specific? Why would they give you access to prints? Why wouldn't they just give you access to nothing? And there's ways to do it even if you have access to nothing. You could get all the way up to OS just from a number, like the number 0, or an empty dictionary, or an empty list. You can do it with anything. So yeah, restricting built-ins does not work. They have not solved the jail problem. All right. But I bet you're thinking like all of these were really obvious. Like you're not supposed to use eval on user provided input. You're not supposed to use exec on user provided input. These people were using eval and exec on user provided input. Of course, there's a problem. And my claim is sometimes you can create a PyGel because Python is weird, even by doing things that look very innocent. Because like I showed you earlier with that get item and get adder, those are all function calls. And function calls are allowed to do anything. Even if you don't expect it to, it can do whatever you want. And Python does that all over the place. So I'm gonna leave this up for like 30 seconds. And I want you to look at it and be like, is there anything even weird here? Like, don't even think about there being a vulnerability. Is there anything even like strange? Because I looked at this code in the context, this is from book FA2024. I was looking at this code in the context of a whole web app, where this was just one line in like a 20-25 file project. And the first time I read this, I immediately skipped over it and I'm like, oh, this is safe. But it's not safe. As it turns out, this in this challenge, this line right here, led to RCE, complete remote code execution, just because they run format twice. That's the whole vulnerability. And I can imagine someone, even though it's kind of weird, like why would you do double format when you could just do it in one? I think it's just a little bit weird. It's not weird enough that I even noticed it. And it's definitely not weird enough that I think you'd think it leads to RCE. But it does. Yeah, it immediately causes arbitrary read. You can actually read like anything that's loaded in Python, you can read it just because of this one function call. And the RCE, like I'm kind of exaggerating, it was a little bit situational because you also needed to have an arbitrary file write execution that was somewhere else in the project. But I'm gonna show you an example of how even arbitrary read can be pretty bad. So I extended the example to put it into a whole user class. Also, like, I kind of glanced over it, but this wrapper, all it does is if you do print and then the object, it'll print the thing that you return. So as you can see, we ran this Python script, gave it my name as input, and then it randomly generated my ID and then gave me this fancy looking string right here. But that's because I gave it an input that it expected. What if I gave it an input it didn't expect? Like, all right, I already talked about that. Like bracket I.id bracket. As you can see, that's this right here. So after the first function call, it's going to replace u.username with what I gave it, which is bracket I.bracket. And then the second format function call is going to see two instances of this bracket I.bracket, and it's going to format both of them. So as you can see, we got the ID in both. And that's already like completely unintended behavior. You're not supposed to be able to read the ID in this format call. The first one's just supposed to be username, the second one's supposed to be ID. The fact that we can do this is already pretty bad. And it's a sign to tell that you can get much, much worse. And yeah, I claim this is a jail, even though it doesn't use eval or exec, which like every other jail does. I claim it's a jail because we're allowed to run code that does whatever we want, and we have restrictions placed on it. And the restrictions are we can only get attributes or methods on the self, because they call format I equals self. So we can access any attribute or method on self, but we can't call methods. I say, or can we? And you guys will have to come to you have to talk to me after this if you want to see how we can call functions, because you can technically. All right, here's the solve. So remember this I gets replaced with self. So you might be running self dot dunder init is this method right here. As it turns out, every single user written method and function in Python stores as an attribute a reference to all of the global variables in the context, which means now we get access to every single global variable in the context, and the one we want is flag up here, which holds the flag. And also, like, notice, I bet you didn't notice, but you'd expect there to be quotes there, because this globals is just a dictionary. So normally there'd be quotes when you're trying to get like a string attribute of a dictionary. But the Python formatter parser is intentionally very bad. So it can't actually support quotes like anywhere in your format string. It'll just break it. So you have to put no quotes, and that's intentional. But yeah, you can see me running this with this provided as input, and it gave me the flag. So we just read a variable that was like, you're not supposed to be able to even touch this. We have no eval, no exact, no area where we're able to run code. And we were able to get access to a variable that we're not supposed to have access to. And I wrote a harder version of this challenge, put it up on SIGPwny. So like, do it. Please. They don't have like none of my packages have solved. And that's about it. Oops. I'll put the slides up, and when you do, you can click on these links. The hack trick one, you can just Google. This one is harder to Google, but has like every single PyGel challenge that was released in the last like 5 years, and like 10 solves for each, and a bunch of helpful stuff to find this. One of my challenges up on this from UACTO. And yeah, raise your hand when you're trying to PyGels. I can help you. This stuff is like genuinely confusing. So if you need help understanding a specific concept, yeah, please raise your hand. Next meetings, I don't know. They're TBD. We'll let you know as soon as we know. And here's the fire.